Steve McQueen was so jealous of James Garner that he would count lines and scripts and demand outfit changes. But their feud went off the rails in 1966 when Garner got the part McQueen really wanted. After that, they had a crazy story about anger, payback, and a racing movie that ended their friendship for good. What shocked you the most? He didn't watch Garner's movie until he was almost dead, and what he saw made him realize he was wrong the whole time. Steve McQueen had a hard life from the start. His birthday is March 24th, 1930, and he was born in Beech Grove, Indiana. He never really had a house. When he was only 6 months old, his trick pilot father left him. Julia, his mother, wasn't able to raise him. She drank too much, so when he was 3, she sent him to Missouri to live with his grandparents. Life was good for a while. Claude, his great-uncle, took him in and was the most like a father figure he had ever had. Claude was strong and honest. He taught Steve how to work hard, be respectful, and speak up for himself. Claude gave him a red bike for his 4th birthday. He felt something when he saw that little bike. Love, speed, and a love that would never end. But things didn't stay steady for long. His mother came back and took him to Indianapolis when he was 8 years old. The new man she married was a really bad person. It was hard for Steve in school, but that wasn't the worst thing. He got beat up by his stepfather over and over. Steve had enough when he was only 9 years old. He ran away and slept on the streets. To make money, he stole things and joined gangs. Every time his mother tried to get him back, she had a new husband who was just as bad. By age 14, he was moving from house to house, getting into trouble, and running away with a traveling band for a while. He finally ended up in Los Angeles. Something broke when his new stepfather threw him down a flight of stairs. Steve stood up, looked him straight in the eye, and said, "I'll kill you if you touch me again." His stepfather was sure he wasn't lying. He got Julia to agree to get rid of him. When Steve was 14, he was sent to the California Junior Boys Republic, a school for troubled teens that helps them change. He fought against it at first, but there were rules for the first time in his life. Put things in order. Stick to it. He fought it at first, but he started to change in the end. The other boys looked up to him, and he was even put on the board that helped run things. He was changed by that place. Even after he became well-known, he never forgot. He went to see the boys a lot, gave them money, and told them that they still had a chance, no matter where they came from. He wasn't done rebelling, though. He tried living with his mother again in New York when he was 16. It did not work. He went from job to job. In Canada, he was a lumberjack. In Texas, he worked on an oil rig. And in the Dominican Republic, he was a towel boy in a brothel. In the South, he was caught without a home and put on a chain gang for 30 days. That woke me up. He knew where his life was going. He had to leave. He made up his mind when he was 17. He joined the Marines in the U.S. His unruly side didn't go away right away. He disappeared without a trace, was downgraded 7 times, and was locked up alone. But something changed. As they trained in the Arctic, a tank went over the edge and into the cold water. Steve jumped in and pulled 5 Marines to safety before he even thought about it. He turned into a star. The people who worked for him began to see him differently. So good was he that President Truman put him on his honor guard. He had never been disciplined before he joined the Marines. After 3 years of service, he was released with honor. He was lost again when he got out, but then he found acting. He joined the New York Neighborhood Playhouse in 1952 with money from the GI Bill. He had never done it before, went to school, or had any other sign that he could make it. He did have something better, though. He was on fire. He had skills to stay alive. He had everything that life could throw at him. People could feel it when he played a part. A cheap sci-fi horror movie called The Blob gave him his big break in 1958. He played Steve Andrews, a high school student who was trying to keep his town from being eaten by a dangerous alien blob. Only one little thing was wrong. Was 28. Even though he didn't look like a kid, it didn't matter. The movie took off after his act, which was very powerful. The Blob was made for only $110,000 to $240,000, and it was never meant to be a hit. But it did so well at the box office that it made $4 million. That being said, McQueen didn't cash in. He was offered a deal to split the profits, but he turned it down in favor of a flat dollar dash. $3,000 in pay. He believed the movie would not do well. It wasn't. He beat himself up for years over that choice. The Blob did something much more important, though, in the long run. It made him stand out. A big name in Hollywood named Dick Powell, who helped start 4-Star Television, saw something special in him. The Western show tracked down, gave him a chance, and McQueen played a bounty hunter named Josh Randall on it. People in the crowd loved him. Producers saw that one episode and knew he could carry his own show. That's how Wanted, Dead, or Alive came to be. Through it, McQueen became a well-known name from 1958 to 1961. Every time he did a show, McQueen pushed himself to do better. Afterwards, he said, "Those were 3 hard years of mother grabbing, but I learned my trade and it made me disciplined." Getting good at that would help him go far. The show made him a good living, but more importantly, it taught him how to control the camera. And just as it was ending, Hollywood called. He got a part in The Magnificent Seven in 1960. It was big. Ikiru Kurosawa's Seven Samurai was turned into a Western, and the movie had a great cast, including Yul Brynner, Charles Bronson, and Eli Wallach. Even though Brynner was supposed to be in charge, McQueen had no plans to follow suit. It wasn't easy to get the part. He still had to work on Wanted, Dead, or Alive. He faked an auto crash. He put on a neck brace and said he needed time off. Then all of a sudden, he was able to shoot the movie. Once he got to the set, he started using tricks to make it look like the audience's McQueen was in the background, changing his hat, loading his gun, or shaking shotgun shells. Anything to get people's attention. Brynner knew what was going on. He even hired someone to keep track of how many times McQueen felt his hat during their scenes at one point. McQueen didn't care that he was mad. This movie, The Magnificent Seven, was a huge hit when it came out on October 12, 1960. It made more than $2 million. That was a lot in those days. In time, Elmer Bernstein's music became famous, and the movie was added to the U.S. National Film Registry. However, James Garner was born in Norman, Oklahoma, on April 7, 1928, as James Scott Bumgarner. From the start, his life was hard. When he was only 4 years old, Mildred, his mother, died after an abortion went wrong and caused damage. Jim, his older brother Charles, and his brother Jack were left with their father, Weldon Bill Bumgarner. It wasn't all easy for Bill, though. He drank too much and wasn't really a man who could take care of 3 boys by himself. When Bill got married again, things got worse. Wilma, his new wife, was mean to him. She used everything she could find to hit the boys, and made fun of James in ways that left scars deeper than the bruises. In his book, The Garner Files, he wrote about how she made him wear dresses to make him look bad. He thought about it all the time. He never forgot about it. When he was 14, his dad finally split up with Wilma, but the harm was already done. James learned to depend on himself since no one else was going to save him. He didn't do well in school. He quit school when he was 16 and started doing odd jobs to make money. He moved from one relative's house to another because money was always tight. He never stayed in one place for too long, but those years made him strong. He didn't like being told what to do, putting up with fake people, or following the rules. He would be known for that attitude for the rest of his life. So he could get away, he joined the Merchant Marines. It didn't take him long to understand he had made a mistake. He thought it was a ticket to something better. He hated his job, and being seasick all the time made it even worse. He quit and went back to Oklahoma. He joined the Oklahoma National Guard not long after that. During the Korean War in 1950, he was the first person from Oklahoma to be forced to join the U.S. Army. War was terrible. Japan was James' home for 14 months, and it almost killed him. He was hurt twice and got 2 Purple Hearts for it. He was a different person when he got home from the war. He had seen too much. He knew what was important and what wasn't. He was also not going to waste time on things that didn't matter. It wasn't in the plan to act. It seemed to just happen. He was told to try it by a friend who worked as a talent agency. James wasn't sure, but he thought there was no harm in trying. In 1954, he got a part as a judge in the Broadway play The Caine Mutiny Court Martial, but he didn't say a word. There was nothing exciting about it, but it changed my life. The real lesson was watching Henry Fonda, who played the lead role in the play. James really liked how natural and easy Fonda's style was. Later, he said that watching Fonda as his own acting school had shaped the way he acts now. It's subtle, real, and never over the top. James did some TV ads after his time on Broadway, which led to a deal with Warner Brothers in 1956. It wasn't much, $175 a week, but it was something. In his early movies like Toward the Unknown and The Girl He Left Behind, he had small parts, but they helped him learn how to work on set. James, unlike many actors-to-be, never saw Hollywood as a dream come true. He saw it as nothing more than a job to make money. He stood out in a field full of people who were desperate for fame because he didn't put on airs. In a strange way, that attitude is what made him popular. Warner Brothers took a chance on him in 1957 when they gave him the lead part in Maverick. At first glance, it looked like any other Western. At that time, there were a lot of shows with horror stories. But James had something else with him. Brett Maverick, his character, wasn't like most gunslingers. He played games of chance and con artists, but he never used violence. Nice, funny, and always one step ahead of everyone else, he was great. People really liked it. Maverick was such a big hit that it sometimes did better than The Ed Sullivan Show. Western heroes usually use guns to solve problems, but Brett Maverick won his fights by being funny and sneaky. What made the show new and interesting was how it changed the genre. It also made James Garner a star. Then came The Great Escape in 1963. It was a historic war movie. Two of the most important parts were played by Steve McQueen and James Garner. He played Captain Virgil Hiltz, who was also known as the Cooler King. He was an American fighter who was always trying to get away and wasn't afraid to stand up to authority. His fearlessness made him stand out, especially in the famous scene where he chased a motorbike. The scrounger, Flight Lieutenant Bob Henley, was played by Garner. He wasn't careless like Hiltz was. He was handy and smart, and he knew where to find fake IDs, tools, and anything else the prisoners needed to get away. Hiltz did what was dangerous. The plans were made by Henley. They were great together as a team. The movie was based on a true story about a group of prisoners getting out of Stalag Luft 3, but Hollywood changed the facts. In fact, most of the people who led the escape were British prisoners. The movie changed its focus to American people like Hiltz and Henley. Some people were not pleased with that. It added to the excitement of the movie, but it wasn't quite right. The two actors didn't get along off-screen. McQueen liked being the center of attention. To get more heroic moments in his part, he pushed for changes. He actually came up with the idea for the motorbike chase. It was nothing like the real escape, but he had to make changes because he didn't think his character was heroic enough. He wanted more action, more thrills, and most of all, more attention on himself. The movie's director, John Sturges, gave in and added the famous chase and jump scene. But even though McQueen was a great writer, he didn't do the jump himself. The stuntman Bud Ekins did it. Still, McQueen never denied that he did it, which added to the public's belief that he was the coolest action star ever. Garner, on the other hand, got tired of McQueen's need for attention. McQueen often tried to steal scenes by moving in ways that were easy to see and took attention away from other players. In one scene, he even said Garner's white shirt made him look more heroic and demanded that it be changed. As much as Garner tried to be polite, he couldn't stand how much McQueen wanted to be approved of all the time. He once called McQueen a poser instead of an actor, saying that he relied too much on charm instead of ability. McQueen wasn't just worried about his part in the movie. It was an obsession. With being the biggest star, he even counted the script's lines to make sure he had the same number of lines as his co-stars. He even said he would quit the movie if his part wasn't given more importance. It was hard to work with him, and his co-stars didn't like it. But surprisingly, it was Garner who talked to the director and persuaded him to keep McQueen on board. Still, McQueen kept pushing the limits, and at one point, Sturges really thought about removing him from the movie. When the cameras stopped rolling, their fight didn't end. Once McQueen thought Garner was having an affair with his wife, Neela Adams, things got even more personal. Even though this suspicion was totally false, it made things worse between them. In spite of cheating on his own spouse before, McQueen was known for being very nervous in his relationships. He held a gun to Neela's head and made her admit to cheating, which was a very frightening thing to do. Garner, on the other hand, loved his wife Lois Clark very much and had never been unfaithful. But McQueen couldn't get rid of the thought because he was jealous. In spite of everything, Garner never said anything mean about McQueen. He thought he was just nervous and not really mean. McQueen had a lot of ability and star power, but he always had to fight his own doubts and prove himself, even when there wasn't anyone else to beat. Even though they had problems, they helped make The Great Escape a classic. When it came out in 1963, it was a huge hit right away. It's still one of the best war movies ever made after all these years. James Garner and Steve McQueen were still at odds with each other, though. Grand Prix came out in 1966, a movie that tried to show the extreme, fast-paced world of Formula One racing. As you might expect, Steve McQueen, who is known for his love of racing, was interested in playing Pete Aaron. There was a fight behind the scenes that stopped everything from going forward, though. He lost his temper when he was speaking with producer Edward Lewis. The two hit each other almost right away. McQueen quit the project because he was angry and didn't want to make any concessions. Some say he was already thinking about making his own race movie and didn't want to be limited by someone else's ideas. He was out either way. John Frankenheimer, who was in charge, had to work quickly. When James Garner showed up, things changed. But unlike McQueen, Garner wasn't known for his love of racing. He was, however, a good leading man, and then he got the part right away. As soon as McQueen found out, things got tense. Garner called McQueen to tell her the news in person. McQueen's response was a long, awkward pause, followed by an awkward good job. After that, McQueen didn't talk to him for a year. Garner, on the other hand, started training right away with the famous driver Bob Bondurant. Everyone was shocked at how quickly he learned it. While other stars got tense when they went over 150 miles per hour, Garner stayed calm. He even did tricks with his car, among them a dangerous fire scene at Brands Hatch. By the end of the movie, real drivers were saying that he could have been a professional. It made McQueen mad. He had always hoped to be the one who made Formula One movies. He had to first watch Garner do it. That's when he put everything he had into making his own race movie, Le Mans. For some reason, McQueen insisted on shooting during a real 24 hours of Le Mans race, determined to capture real speed, real danger, and the real deal. But there was a price to pay for this promise. The budget got out of hand very quickly. There wasn't a plot. John Sturgis, the director, quit in the middle because McQueen was too focused on being perfect. Things got worse. Le Mans didn't do well when it finally came out. Some people said it was dead. The racing video was great, but the story wasn't there. It was important for McQueen to show that he was better than Grand Prix. Instead, his movie almost broke him. Grand Prix, on the other hand, became a classic. 3 Oscars were given to it. F1 stars like Graham Hill and Juan Manuel Fangio were there. What's more, it gained respect in the racing world. Garner was once just an actor who played a racer, but now he was a part of the past of motorsport. After many years, McQueen's son finally got him to watch Grand Prix. He didn't want to say it, but he knew the movie was great. The competition had been going on for years and sometimes got really small. There was even talk in Hollywood that McQueen once urinated on Garner's plants because she was upset. It could have been true or false. He never got over it, though. Le Mans gained its own kind of respect over time. The movie wasn't good, but it was one of the most true-to-life race movies ever. Grand Prix told you a story, but Le Mans put you in charge. That's why race fans still love it, even though it didn't work out. Steve McQueen had everything. He is the highest-paid actor in Hollywood, the perfect scary guy, and the star of hit movies like Bullitt and Papillon. Things started to go wrong in the mid-1970s, though. He wasn't seen on the big screen for years after the huge inferno. There will be no more movie sets or openings. He spent his time instead riding motorbikes and taking a motorhome across the country. The magic was gone when he finally came back. The Hunter, an enemy of the people, and his other movies didn't do very well. That was the end of Hollywood. It was getting worse for the world's biggest star, but it wasn't just his job that was falling apart. Inside, his life was a mess. He smoked pot, drank too much, and had a bad attitude. He cheated on his wives, fought, and hurt his partners in his marriages. Neely Adams, his first wife, later told everyone how scary their relationship really was. He abused her and controlled her, and at his worst, he put a gun to her head. He went through the same terrible thing with his second wife, actress Ollie McGraw. McQueen could never get away from the devils that were after him, no matter how well he did. Then they got sick. In 1978, he got a cough that wouldn't go away. At first, he thought it was because he smoked, so he stopped. The cough wouldn't go away, though. The antibiotics did not help. Doctors told him the news by the end of 1979. Mesothelioma is a rare cancer that spreads quickly. There was no way to get better. He thought that being around asbestos in the Marines and on movie sets in Hollywood had caused it. He was dying no matter where it came from. McQueen went to alternative medicine because he was desperate for a cure. He went to Mexico and spent a lot of money on strange treatments, about $40,000 a month, which is almost $150,000 today. Injections of live cells from cows and sheep, coffee grounds, and raw animal parts. Everything sounded crazy, but when time is running out, you'll do anything. In November 1980, he took one last trip to Juarez, Mexico, to have surgery to get rid of huge growths on his body. The operation went badly. After a few hours, his heart stopped. He was gone in an instant. He was only 50 years old. Steve McQueen's life was never quiet or clean, never easy. He fought Hollywood, his own problems, and finally, he fought to stay alive. But he was still a hero after he died. At the same time, James Garner was one of the few stars who never went away, even when Hollywood changed a lot. It didn't matter how old he got. He kept playing parts that made people love him more. In Murphy's Romance, 1985, he played a kind-hearted widower opposite Sally Field. It was one of his most remembered roles. Beautiful, friendly, and strong in a quiet way. It was the kind of part he did best. The movie did very well and made $30 million. His acting was so good that he was nominated for his first and only Oscar. That movie made people remember why they had always felt a connection with him. Then, in 2004, he made a big change by taking on a new job. He played the older Noah Calhoun in The Notebook. Noah was a loving husband who took care of his wife as she lost her memory due to dementia. The movie was a hit, making $117 million worldwide, and Garner's act was one of the most moving parts of it. He didn't have a lot of screen time, but each scene he was in was important. The Screen Actors Guild even put him up for an award. He was still able to move people in a way that few artists could after decades in the business. But Garner was also a great person. He was a person who did the right thing. At the time, almost no one was brave enough to stand up to big companies when they tried to cheat him. A writer's strike was used as an excuse by Warner Brothers in the 1960s to try to get him out of Maverick. He knew they had other jobs for him, though, so he sued them and won. It was very important. Then, in the 1980s, he fought Universal Studios over the Rockford Files. They might not have paid him what he was owed because they lied about how much money the show made. It took 6 years of fighting, but he won his case for $16.5 million. Many people said the amount was in his favor, but it was never made public. More importantly, his fight showed how companies messed with money to avoid paying actors, making it possible for other people to fight back. But all the things he did over the years hurt him. He had a lot of knee and back pain by the late 1980s. In 1988, he had to have 5 bypass surgeries, but he kept working as an actor. He later had more than one knee replaced. He also had a serious stroke in 2008. Even with everything, he never lost his funny or kind side. Not many people knew this, but he also dealt with sadness behind the scenes. But he never let it define who he was. People always looked up to him, honored him, and looked up to him professionally. In 2010, he quit acting for good. After that, he died on July 19, 2014, at the age of 86. There was more than one star who died that day. They lost a man who always stood up for himself and other people. He didn't just leave behind great acts. He also left behind a strong, fair, and quiet heroism that will never go away.